my channel. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today we're going to look at this beautiful Esterbrook J from the 1950s, I would say, and this pen has a story to it. I love pens with stories, and I love restoring pens that have stories. A few weeks ago, Ivan posted this pen on a Facebook group, which I belong to, and asked whether anybody was near Lethbridge, Alberta, that might be able to restore it for him as it belonged to his late mother. A number of people suggested that I was close by and that I might be able to restore it. I always say to people who want me to restore their pens that I do this as a hobby. I'm not a professional, and I only restore other people's pens who I know locally. Well, Ivan is local. He's a member of our Calgary Pen Club now. I reached out to him and asked him if he would send the pen to me to see whether I could restore it for him. He sent me photos of the pen, and by examining the photos and pictures of the nib, I recognized that it was in excellent shape. All it really needs is a cleanup and a new sack. Cross my fingers. So I'm making an exception for a local Canadian and doing this restoration. Of course, he had to put his mother's pen in my hands, and because this is a beloved fountain pen, I'm going to be very, very gentle with it and not do anything invasive. Let's take a look at the pen. The lever filler goes crunch, 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 so there's a desiccated sack inside there that needs replacing. The end finials are intact. One of the things that these Esterbrook J's suffer from is this riveted clip here sometimes gets very loose. And if they're loose or broken, there's not much you can do about that. I've got this other Esterbrook J here that I'm going to restore soon, and it has a broken clip and a mangled nib, but I ended up getting a replacement nib. That's one nice thing about these Estes from the 1950s. They have steel nibs, and there was such a variety of nibs available back in the day, and they made so many of them that you can get replacements. This is an Esterbrook Renew Point 2668 firm medium that I ordered on eBay. It was $10. It came in the original box, and there's the nib. These nib units just screw in and screw out, and I thought for $10 I'm not even going to try to fix that nib. Maybe I will eventually, but that nib should just unscrew. There we go. All kinds of gunk on it. I don't know what that is. There's gunk inside the section as well. Let's see if that nib unit screws in, and it does. I just got this new nib this morning, and there it is. It's a 2668 medium. The one that came out of it. This is a Venus nib unit, but they were interchangeable with the Esterbrook's. So there, 50% of that resurrection has now been done. All I have to do is replace the sack on this one. But the good news is that the nib on Ivan's mom's pen is a 9555 Esterbrook. We'll have to look up on the chart what 9555 means. And according to the internet, the 955 Esterbrook Gregg nib, that's G-R-E-G-G, is what they deemed in 1955 a shorthand nib, sometimes marked a fine shorthand nib. So we'll have to see how that writes, but we'll polish that up. First thing I want to find out is if the nib comes out. Yep, it unscrews. It's a little bit crunchy. There we go. There's that 9555 Gregg nib, and that section will need to be heated off because it might be shellacked on. The barrel's in good shape. I think this pen was well used because the Esterbrook imprint is almost worn away. When we polish this barrel up, I'm going to avoid that whole area to not make that any more faint than it is. You can hardly read that it says Esterbrook J made in Canada. This one made in Canada. There we go. No major gouges, and it seems like that pressure bar is in good shape, but we have to open up the barrel to find out. Again, the clip is in solid condition. There's no spinning. The celluloid has shrunk a little bit, so that cap band is spinning a little bit, but there's no cracks in the cap lip that I can see. So this just needs a soak and some polish. So I'll mask off the clip and the cap band, and we'll go at this with some micro mesh. But the next thing I need to do is heat that section off to get at the barrel and get rid of all of the remnants of that desiccated sack. So let's move to the workbench right now. So I'm putting both the cap and the nib unit into the ultrasonic bath of pen flush. I make my own pen flush out of 90% distilled water and 10% ammonia. So now I've got my heater out, and the key is that celluloid melts at a higher temperature than shellac. So if this has been shellacked on, the shellac will melt and get gummy before the celluloid starts to get pliable. You have to be very careful with celluloid and heat. So I always put my fingers into the heat stream, and if my fingers get too hot, I pull away and do it very, very slowly, test it, go over and over again, test it, and not let it get too hot. And just that little bit of heat allowed that section to get loose. Heat a little bit more. Yeah, I'm going to soak it a little bit just in case there's some ink that's hanging on inside there that's making it tough. It's going around in circles, but it's not coming out. There, I've soaked it a little bit. I'm going to add some more heat. So the section is not wanting to come out. It's spinning in there, but it's not coming out. So I'm putting it in my little dental tool heater that I got from Scott Poly of the Inky Nib, and it's going to heat it up to 70 degrees. That's Celsius. I'm going to test it regularly to make sure, but it's going to give it an even heat all the way around. I don't like adding so much heat to it that it'll distort the barrel. The other thing I've done is I've put the nib unit back in so that the ebonite section doesn't distort and become an oval shape. So putting that feed and nib in there in the nib collar will help that section keep its shape. I'll let it sit there for a few minutes. Okay, finally success. After some soaking and some heating, I let it sit in my dental tool heater for about 5 or 10 minutes, kept checking on it. And then I gave it more heat with my heat gun, and it softened up that celluloid right there a little bit, but it took some pulling and cajoling to get that out of there. So there's the section. I'll give you a contrast. I didn't even heat this one up, and it came right out. And that was all nice and smooth. It doesn't even look like it was shellacked. But there's the remnants of that old sack on that one, and there are the remnants of that old latex sack on this one. So we'll chip away at that shellacked down latex sack on that section and clean that whole thing up. And let's inspect the inside of this pen to see that the pressure bar seems to be in excellent shape. There's just old desiccated sack all through there. So I'm going to go at that with some dental tools to chip it out and soak it some more after those big chunks are out and get that completely clean. I have some test tube cleaning brushes that I use for these sections to get them pristine and clean. But that's all good news. We got the section off. I'm going to clean that up, then we can polish up this 9555 Gregg nib. Now I've done some research while I was waiting for this nib to heat up. The Gregg stands for Gregg Shorthand, which is a shorthand system popular in the United States. The other big ones are Faulkner and Pittman, and a number of others as well. I never took shorthand in high school. I took typing instead. But why you'd want to do shorthand with a fountain pen is beyond me to begin with, usually with a pencil. The 9555 is a Gregg extra fine shorthand nib, and the shorthand nibs were supposed to be relatively dry, because that's the other thing, is you want it to dry quickly if you're writing quickly. So interesting stuff. This is a made in Canada fountain pen with a Gregg shorthand fine steel nib, ebonite section, celluloid pen. We'll clean up that section so it's ready for a new sack, and I'll get all that old desiccated sack out of there. So now I have all the pieces cleaned up. The section is clean as a whistle. I'll polish up that ebonite, of course. And we're going to see about buffing up that nib as well. Just put it right back in the section. Once I've polished up the section, I'm going to replace the sack on there. Put a new sack on that nipple on the section. Make sure it works correctly in the barrel. Sucks up ink. I took some video using my camera. Goes down inside the barrel there and shows how that mechanism works. Goes right down to the bottom, and you can see that J-bar down there is in good shape. There's no rust. And that little extra celluloid section right there is what the sack squeezes against. So we can use standard size, which are number 16 sacks. In examining the cap, notice that the end finial plastic there is broken around the edges, but it's not loose, so that rivet is in good shape. I've cleaned the cap out, so there was a lot of old ink in there, but it's pretty clean now. And the good thing is that that rivet is holding, even though the plastic has chipped around the outside. But that should hold in place for another several years. So we'll get a new latex sack and see about replacing that, getting the pen to work, suck up ink. We'll measure how much ink it's going to take, and then I'm going to test that nib. And once we have it writing properly, we'll go at polishing up that celluloid on the barrel and the cap, and getting this pen writing like new again. So that ebonite section shined up nicely with some Meguiar's Mirror Glaze 9 Swirl Remover number 2. Make sure we get all of that out of the inside of the section. Those threads are nice and clean. And the other thing I like to do is to prepare the tail end here, called the nipple of the section. Prepare it for getting a new sack attached to it with shellac. Get some flexible 400 grit sandpaper and just wrap it around that stem right there, and just sand that ebonite down so that it's got a nice grippy surface to it. So it'll take that latex sack and shellac well. There we go. Ebonite turns a little bit brown. There it is, brown. And it smells like a burning tire. But that surface is now nicely rough. This surface here is clean. All the shellac and old sack is gone. I don't believe that I'm going to shellac this barrel back down again. It's a really tight fit. I actually might have to heat the barrel to get it back on again, because that celluloid has shrunk over the years and the ebonite has not. That's why it was so difficult to get this off. It doesn't want to go on now. To keep that from splitting when I put it back together again, I'm going to heat that barrel. But we have to replace the sack on there first, and let's get after that right now. So I took the nib to my buffing wheel, added a little bit of Autosol metal polished liquid, and buffed that nib up so that it looks brand new. That looks very nice. That ebonite feed is kind of a matte surface, so I'm not going to polish that. That looks pretty normal. So now we need our sack spreader. We need a little bit of pure talc. We need a number 16 size sack and the barrel, and we'll find out that that fits perfectly in that barrel, and we'll see it working. It squishes that sack against that celluloid ring on the inside of that barrel. We just have to trim it to size. So we're going to just add some pure talc to this latex sack just so that it slides nicely inside that barrel, and that section, when it's in the pen, will come to about there. So we want the sack to be trimmed to about there. Well, let's trim it off flush first. There, so that's roughly flush. And now we trim that to that line right there. That's where we want it to come to. So I'm going to mark that with my fingers, and we're going to trim that off. Then we give it a trial run, putting the sack on the sack spreader, push it up underneath. There we go, that should be correct. Yep, that's as far as it wanted to go down inside that barrel. And we get my shellac pen from the Inky Nib, that's Scott Poly, and we just paint with this little brush all the way around. around, sack back on the spreader, and we do it for real this time. Spread your sack and shout, and it pops in your face. We'll try it again. Okay. I got excited when I spread my sack. There we go. You have to calm down, Doug. There we go. Spread it. There we go. And give it a little bit of a twist just to seal it. And then we paint over that edge right there just to seal it from the outside all the way around. There. Now we let that dry completely. Several hours for that. And then we can put it back in the pen. Fill it with ink, check it for leaks, and then do a writing sample. So it's the next day and that shellac has dried. So we're going to put it back in the barrel. Before I do that, I got a little bit of shellac on the ebonite section. So I'm going to polish that off. And a little bit of polishing compound gets that section shining again. So we can put the nib unit back in again. A little talc on that sack again, just to make sure it slides nicely. So yeah, that slides nicely. Now the big issue is going to be that that barrel celluloid has shrunk, and that section is not going to want to sit back in there very easily. So I'm going to have to heat this to get it a little bit pliable and then push the section into place. Generally you would shellac this down, but because that celluloid is so shrunk and the ebonite isn't fitting into there too nicely, I think just heating that up, getting the section in, and then letting it cool will hold that section in place for a long, long time. So shellac won't be necessary. As it cools, I can feel it getting tighter. There, and I've adjusted it around so that the nib lines up with the lever. Now we can do a test fill. I want to weigh this pen empty first. So 9.7 roughly. Press tear, get out our Watermans, and we have bubbles. Pull the lever a couple of times until there are no more bubbles. Put it back on the weigh scale, and we have a 1 milliliter of ink, which is about what a number 16 size sack takes. So 1 milliliter of ink, that's excellent, means it's filling properly. Now we just need some paper to give this a try. So this is a circa 1955 Esterbrook J, and it has a number 9555 nib, steel nib, which is a fine Gregg Shorthand nib. So let's check it out. Horizontally it's very thin, it's a bit thicker vertically, so it has a bit of a stub-like feel, but it is fine. It has a good amount of wetness to it and a good amount of feedback. This nib is writing perfectly. I don't think I need to do anything to it. I'm just going to double check. Those tines are slightly misaligned, so I'm going to adjust them a little bit. That's better. Yeah, no worries at all. This is a nicely writing pen. It feels a bit like a very fine cursive italic. So now that we've got it writing, it is effectively a useful restored pen at this point. I can't do anything about that chipped end finial. I can polish up the clip and the cap band and that lever a little bit and the end finial. But here's the dilemma I have. If this were my pen and I was going to polish it up for sale, I'd go into that celluloid with some 400 grit sandpaper, sand it down really nice and smooth, and then go through all my micro mesh from 1500 through to 12,000, then some polishing compound, and it would come up like it's brand new. But it also polishes out all of the history of the pen. There's already a lot of wear on this pen from Ivan's mother using it. There's marks here where the cap was posted. There's marks here where the pen is capped and it rubs against the body. So I'd be able to polish those out, but I'm wondering how much character I take out of this pen and how much I leave in. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just polish it with some polishing compound. And what that will do is take all the years of grime off the surface, brighten it up a little bit, but still leave all of the wear marks. You might be able to see a lot of those wear marks in that pen from years and years of use. I think I want to leave that personality into that pen for Ivan to enjoy and as a memento of his late mother. But I'm curious to see what the difference might be. So here's my Esterbrook with the broken clip. I'm going to polish just this section here with 400 grit through the micromesh and then polishing compound and leave the rest of the pen the way it is. And we'll see what this could look like if it were taken right up to brand new. There's the Esterbrook imprint, made in Canada, and there's the lever. So I'm going to go the opposite side. We're going to do just this bit right here. And there we go. There's that one side just polished up from 400 grit through to 12,000 micro mesh and then polishing compound. You can probably see that there are some gouges that I didn't sand out right there that I will eventually. But there's that polished side as compared to the side that has not been touched. And let's compare the blue one to the copper colored one. So now I'm just going to polish this barrel with polishing compound, no sanding. So we'll end up with these imprints remaining, but it should actually shine up pretty nicely. And there we go. That's just with a little polishing compound. It still has nicks and wear and the odd very subtle scratch here and there. And that line from the cap and that line from posting are still there. But overall, it looks very shiny and nice. Let's compare it to the cap. So all the grime is gone. It's got some patina on it, but we'll do the same to the cap, polish it up. And there we have it. All polished up. Still has nicks and scratches and patina all over the pen. There's even a good sized gouge right there. But those are all marks that were made during use by Ivan's mother. And so it reminds me of a pen that was bequeathed to my wife from her grade 4 teacher when her grade 4 teacher passed away at the age of 105 just a few years ago. It was a Schaefer tuckaway, and I had it restored by Jack Hernandez. And when I took it to him, the gold cap was covered in Charlotte's teeth marks on the gold cap. And he said, I can get those out for you. He said, no, leave them in. Every one of those tooth marks is a reminder of her, and my wife will treasure that pen all the more for the witness marks from her beloved teacher and friend. So here's what the pen could look like. Right there, like brand new. And that's what it did look like. And this is what it looks like now. Fully functioning, good sack, nice section, beautiful nib, nice writer. I've polished up the end finials as well, chipped though they may be, and this is now an excellent writer. So now I'll come back with my thoughts about this restoration. So what are my thoughts about this restoration? Well, I'm really pleased with it. I was really nervous about it. Again, as I said in the beginning, I'm an amateur at this. This is a hobby for me. I don't do this as a professional. So when Ivan asked around for someone to restore his Esterbrook J, a number of people on Facebook recommended me because I was close to him geographically. But I will generally only take on projects like this from people that I know closely, personally. It's a lot more nerve-wracking to restore someone's beloved, cherished memento of a family member than it is to restore this Esterbrook J, which is almost identical, that I found in an antique store. This has no personal feeling to me at all, other than it's a really interesting pen, and I wish pens could tell us their stories. It'll make a nice restore for me, and I'll be able to sell it for more than I paid for it. This, however, is a different story. this has meaning to someone, and so it becomes a lot more difficult to work on. I don't have any worries. If I go at this pen and I break it, then I'm just out the money I paid for it. If I take Ivan's mom's pen and I break it, then I'm going to feel bad about that. I told him that I couldn't be held responsible if I broke the pen, and he understood that, and he trusted me. So I really appreciate that. So thank you very much, Ivan, for putting your mom's fountain pen in my hands and trusting me to do this restoration. That's why I've not gone at it as deeply as I would another fountain pen that didn't have as much meaning, because I thought you would probably enjoy having some of your mother's bite marks and scratch marks and wear marks on this pen. All you want is to have it in your possession, and when you write with it, because now that it writes like a beautiful fountain pen, just gorgeous, every time you write with it, you'll think about your mom. And many of us are in this hobby because we, number one, enjoy how fountain pens write, and number two, we enjoy the personalized feeling of writing with a fountain pen. Having an object that someone used every day, it gets imbued with their character, their spirit. And so the pen becomes much more valuable than it would as just an ordinary object. So again, thanks go out to Ivan for trusting me with this valuable memento of your mother. I'll get it back in the mail to you, and you'll be able to write with it real soon. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comments, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching, and that's all she wrote.
I made this.